there any other specific skills?
You need to work on a big data.
So how easy or how difficult was it to switch industries?
So we started building on different kind of report.
Even though I don't have FP&A experience,
if you are doing some course and putting on resume,
are there any certifications that you plan to do? You might have had a learning or something that you think they should be doing.
What you actually know and what you want to learn. Have you contributed to the business?
What they should do in the first 30 days. Hey Arpit, good morning.
Hey, hi Asif, good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I know it's a working day and taking time is difficult, but thank you so much for joining us. And as you know, this is going to be a part of a book which is going to help hundreds and maybe thousands of people migrate or get into a profile that they wish to get into. So thank you so much again for doing this.
Thank you. Even I feel privileged that you having me on this podcast actually and helping students out there is really important part of contributing to the society.
Absolutely. So before we get into more specific questions that we want to cover, why don't you give us an introduction of what have been your journey so far? What have you done after qualification, and what is your present role, and what was the journey so far?
Sure. So basically, see, I qualified CA in 2015. Throughout academic wise, I have been good, and throughout it has been my first attempt, and I had a rank in CA final. But I think what I feel now is that was the easiest thing to do. The journey really started after that, because after completing CA, I wasn't sure actually what I want to do. Even so, I did articleship from a mid-sized firm, so wasn't aware of much of the profiles what exists. So I was aware of auditing kind of role, taxation kind of role, and finance, corporate finance kind of role. So wasn't aware of much. And how I started my career after that was because I came from a tier 3 place kind of Shegao, which is like in the Vidarbha part. And after that, when I cleared my CA, I had so many options open. So I was really confused, and didn't had some guidance from the senior, but wasn't clear much, because the kind of people I even consulted, they were either in practice or working in a similar kind of audit or taxation role. So I got placement with L&T through campus, and that was a pure finance and account role. So working with initially, I loved that, but slowly when you go into corporate, you start understanding about more roles, what exist, and what actually is kind of a right fit for you. But the thing in corporate, what you also feel is once you start working in some profile, navigating from one profile to another is not that easy task. So I had my chances. I worked through different profiles, and finally I came through FP&A. So I started my career with L&T. Then I worked with Cipla into more of a again corporate finance, more around the receivables management role. Then I have worked with Merck. So I got my first opportunity around FP&A and business finance with Merck. So Merck is a German MNC basically into pharmaceutical segment. And that is where my FP&A journey started. And after that, for last 1.5 years, I'm working with a fintech startup, OneCard, where I am leading the FP&A function. So the journey has been really was a good transition, but FP&A certainly I'm loving as a profile right now.
Awesome. So you mentioned you got placed into L&T because of the rank, which helped in one way, and also the campus placement. And from L&T, you moved to Cipla. Cipla was also more of a traditional accounting role, but Merck was the first FP&A role that you came across. So what were some of the things that went during that phase when you interviewed for Merck? What were the challenges that you faced? How did you prepare for that interview, which was different from a traditional accounting audit role? So if you can share a little bit about your experience with Merck interviews and preparation.
So when I was working with Cipla, I did more there, and that is where I understood that this is a kind of more interesting role closer to the business. So I always wanted to be in a place where basically you know the numbers, you are closer to business, understanding how actually business is run instead of just doing the back end auditing and accounting role. So I actually started interacting with the team over there, and skills you need. Basically, you need to be good in understanding auditing impact. So I found that your Excel skills as such, and also the some part of the new age tools, you can say Power BI or Tableau kind of. So I started reading about it more often from the interview perspective. And when I interviewed with Merck, most of the questions were around the business. So more of a business case studies. So let's say if you want to start a pharmaceutical division around the respiratory business, how will you build the P&L? So it was FP&A for me is more of a logical thinking from how you will manage a complete business as a sole owner or an entrepreneur mindset basically. So
Mhm.
I had that preparation beforehand through my experience with working in the CIPLA with the FP&A team, interacting with them, and also reading some of the material available over the internet basically. And I think the transition when I interviewed, it really went well in terms of the business related case studies and question, and that is where I transition into that role.
You mentioned about skills like Power BI, Excel. So were there specific? Are there any other specific skills that you had to work upon? And what did you do exactly to build all of these skills?
So I think on-job learning was the thing. So when I went, so initial basic level skills are always expected. Let's say kind of your normal Excel formulas like VLOOKUP, index match, because in FP&A function or any MNC or even a pharmaceutical where the data is heavy, is the number of product SKUs you have. You need to work on a big data. So that basic Excel skills are skills is expected, and also hands-on experience or and user experience of some of these tools which company expect you to work on. So if
Mhm.
that is there, and if you have that common sense which a manager or an hiring manager expects from you, if you have that, hiring is not that difficult part. If you have that resume in place, also when you get
Mhm.
onto the train, then how you navigate your daily role. So that day-to-day learnings after
Mhm.
joining, that was the key. Initial, you can say 90 days or 120 days initially was a pretty tough for me, because that mindset when you work into auditing or a taxation kind of a role, you have that fixed
Mhm.
mindset of finding things or checking that mindset. But in
Mhm.
FP&A, you're actually solving things for business. So basically preparing management, you are presenting numbers to the management in a form that they are able to make decisions out of it. And also in a manner that you are understanding the business and able to present it. So that mindset change is required. And that is, I think, day to day interacting with the business teams, with the marketing team over there, serving their requirements, presenting.
Mhm.
So how we used to do is we used to have monthly business review meeting. So initial 1 or 2 months, that was actually very, very difficult.
Mhm.
But you need to put in, let's say, some higher efforts in terms of putting some more number of hours in
Mhm.
initial 90 days or 120 days. And once you get onto the numbers, I think it's not that difficult once you get into a business on a regular basis.
Understood. So you mentioned that the first few months or first 90 days are the toughest. Now that you've been through that a couple of times with Merck and with the new
Yeah.
company, with the fintech company that you're working with right now, what do you recommend if somebody is starting new, what they should do in the first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? Is there something that you would recommend based on whatever you experience in your two FP&A roles? What
Yeah,
basically they should? I am somebody
sure.
new and I
Yeah.
don't know anything about FP&A, but I know accounting, I know auditing. What should I do in
Yeah.
the first 80 days or 60 days?
I think the best thing, see, whenever you are moving into the role, you always have some transition time. So the best is to utilize that time in terms of you always have some seniors who have that experience into FP&A or similar kind of role. So the first and the easiest thing is to interact with them, reach out to them, understand what kind of their day-to-day activities are, because that helps a lot. Instead of going reading a Google material, having a informal discussion with your seniors or your known people is much easier way to start with. And
Mm-hmm.
based on their guidance, what kind of things you should read, what kind of articles you should read, what kind of Excel formulas or Excel basic knowledge you should have, what kind of Tableau or Power BI or any other tools that company you are going to work into is expecting you to work on. That basis, if you have that, it's much easier to navigate. And once you join in first 60 days, I think the first initial 15-20 days you should focus on understanding the business, like what actual business is, because FPN is always putting a PNL for business and
Yes.
like putting the numbers in understandable form. So understanding business is the key. Then always understanding their basic accounting system, because that is where you are going to pull the data. So whatever system they are using, how they actually, how the first and easiest thing is how is management actually seeing the data at the moment, because first you should match their current expectation and then you should build on that. So understanding their existing system, existing reports, existing way of presentation, and you
Mhm.
should work thoroughly putting some higher number of hours in initial 90 days, because that is more crucial, because that is where you also build relationship with your senior guys and the management in terms of what are their expectations from you. So that really helps. So I think that's the key.
So if I can summarize in three or four points, first important thing is to be able to learn from your senior, because that's the best source that you can learn from.
Yeah,
Other thing that you mentioned was the most important part was learning about the business and understanding what's the accounting system and whatever the reports are there present right now, so that you get a sense of what's happening and you can then take it from that point, is what I could take away.
yeah, yeah,
Awesome. Now we'll move to some some subjective questions which can be different for you, different for somebody else. So
yeah, yeah, sure.
there is always a sense of people always anticipate what would it be working in FP&A while they are working in audit. So one of the questions that people who feel audit is becoming monotonous or is a little bit dry, is what they ask is, will FP&A be also like that after some time? So based on your experience, how have you found your, if you can compare your experience working in audit and FP&A, what did you find more interesting? And this is very, very subjective,
Yeah.
which can be different for different people.
Yeah, no, certainly. So see, both everyone has own interest, but FP&A for me, I've been loving this role, and that is why I've been in this FP&A kind of role for last 5 years, more than 5 years now. So basically, FP&A is always more challenging when you say a business like I was working with Merck into it was a very stable business as such. So, but there were newer challenges in terms of every year you have AOP, monthly you are targeting how the business is performing. You have to look at the different ratios. You have to make business understand what is going right and wrong, because product mix, margins, cost, savings. So you are actually along with the business, you are owning the P&L, and that is the key about FP&A, I think. Uh, so basically, that was a key learning. And then always there are new product launches where you are building on the business case, more like on entrepreneur mindset. Which you are launching a product, what are the initial cost involved, how are you going to make the profit out of it, what are the right margins, what is the right volume. So there is a lot of discussions, and you always have that sense understanding the business. And when you know that what things are actually happening, you actually love it. In auditing or taxation kind of role, sometimes so you can always connect to the business, but it's not easy because you don't have that close interaction and day interaction with the business. Even when I switched from Merck to OneCard, which is a fintech startup, that has been a very different journey, because even that was a sector change for me from pharmaceutical to fintech. And the initial learning in understanding, interacting with the business, understanding the ratios, how they read the PL, how additional insights you can add to them, how you can strategically, because with a segment kind of fintech, it's not a 1 year planning you have to do. You have to plan for next 3 4 years, because it's more like a dynamic thing. Every 2 months you'll make a plan, and every 2 months you have to build on something additional, because with the startups day to day the things are changing. So always you are involved with the senior management, and that is what you love, the interaction, the learnings, being with them, and the inputs you can actually offer to them. So FP&A certainly from that per se is for me has been much interesting and challenging kind of a role.
Understood. So according to your experience, it has been you could more relate to the business versus in accounting audit roles, because you're closer
Yeah.
to the action, you're closer to decisions, and you're actually helping them make those decisions. So I can relate to that. Now you touched upon a very interesting thing that I want to ask. I'm very curious to know, compared to Merck and OneCard, the two industries. So there are two questions that I have, and we can take it one by one. So the first question is, how easy or how difficult was it to switch industries from, say, a pharma to a fintech? And what did you do to prepare for that? And
Hmm.
second question is, again, Merck is a relatively big organization versus
Yeah.
fintech versus one card, which is relatively new. So, was there a
Hmm.
FP&A department set up in the new company that you started, or
Hmm.
uh, was it something that they were looking up to you to set it up? How was
Yeah.
the how was it different between the two organizations? First question is the switch between the industries, And second is,
Yeah.
how was the
Right.
FP&A team in Merck different from FP&A team in FinCard?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think switch when I so interview process and joining wasn't that difficult, because see, with a startup, when there is a when they want someone on a profile, basically they are looking out building a small company, building into a big, so they always have roles open. But actually after joining, the environment was completely different, so it was a big transition. So day to day, when I joined in, we were the company was hardly a 200 people team, and as a
Mhm.
finance function, it was only a 3-member team. As a finance, I'm telling. So there wasn't a function or even a role called as FP&A. So they wanted someone for a planning function, basically in terms of a building a AOP or a strategic plan for next 4 or 5 years, which can help them for basically fundraise, basically day-to-day business, like relating to the business KPIs, looking at the performance month on month. So there wasn't such function as such, because in
Mhm.
the growth phase, what generally a startup or anyone will look at is the key numbers. So like we are into a credit card, so what the initial KPI was just how much sourcing we are doing month on month. But then when I joined in and the more discussions, so when I started understanding the business from respective teams, so we started building on different kind of reports, different kind of P&L metrics, which can actually help management. So initial transition was much difficult, understanding the business, how, because there wasn't any back data as well. The kind of softwares which you have in a established company and kind of software and the data you have in the new age company is always different, because they are actually now started building on the report. So sometimes you don't even have the data to present. So you yourself have to build it, you have to interact with more number of people. Even there
Mhm.
will be a lot of pushback, because everyone has so much of work on the plate. So
Mhm.
transition joining has been easy, but transition, that initial 60 to 90 days, has been much difficult. So you always need to have more interaction with the people, putting more number of hours, more efforts, understanding the business, and then slowly, I think you have to navigate to the expectation level. So initially, even matching the expectation of the management in a startup kind of world was much difficult for me. Initial 90 days was a much a learning curve, basically, and then it slowly stabilized, and I'm actually loving it. And because the challenges here will be much higher as compared to any established company that way.
And how does it look right now? So when you joined, you mentioned it was three people and 200 size in terms of the organization. How is it grown right now, and how many people are there in finance, and how many
Yeah,
people
so
are?
headcount wise, one card has been it's a unicorn valued startup, and we have more than 1,000 people like company right now. So in 1.5 year, basically, and basically finance team still growing. So we are a 8 people team around. FP&A function still a small function, but yeah, the kind of value we are adding in terms of month on month reviews, in terms of building management expectation, investor reporting, the day-to-day discussion with the business. I think we have reached a level that we are adding value to the business, and there is still so much to do. But yeah, slowly we are building on this.
So that brings me to the next part of the next part of this discussion that we are having, which is more related to interview preparation. So somebody who's starting out, say, is qualified as a CA just recently, or maybe just working as a CA to accounting audit roles for a couple of years, and they want to get into FP&A. So few challenges that they face. One is the getting the interview itself, because a lot of people are looking for FP&A experience and they don't have that experience to show. So again, two questions. First question is, what can somebody like that do to be able to convince the hiring manager, even though I don't have FP&A experience, but these are some skills I can bring from my audit role or my accounting
Yeah.
role, FP&A. So that is one. And second is, what should they do to prepare for the interview? So these are the two
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah. So for transition, basically, what I feel you should sit down and review your experience, what you actually contributed to an organization in any of the role. Because even if you're doing an auditing kind of role or any other role, which you feel is more of a backend, but there is always some value you're adding to the organization, and that you should try to relate it to the business and try to put it down in the resume. So when you're let's say in audit, you can put your finding, which where you may have bought some savings, or you may have found some internal control which has helped organization to build on some numbers, or on the P&L part build into some savings. So you can always put that number, how that has contributed to business on a
Mhm.
like year on year manner, or what is the key contributions you can put in. Then the kind of skills, because in audit you are using, you're also working on a big data, so kind of skills you have, which is actually which you can use in the FP&A function as well. So you can write down those skills. Maybe that can be your Excel skills, the presentation skills. It can be some of the tools, SAP, because you have been on the client side, you must be using SAP or any other Oracle or any other accounting software, which even the FP&A function at some extent you are going to require. So you can always write down those skills, and alongside you can always, when you're transitioning or you're looking out for role, you can have some certification scores which can add some value to your resume basically, because there are a lot many courses available right now, and that even that you are putting efforts to transition actually talks a lot. So if you are doing some course and putting on resume, a hiring manager will have that sense that you are actually putting in efforts for the transition, and that will be easier to navigate then into a new role.
Understood. So, I mean, from that point that you mentioned about doing a certification, and that definitely shows that you are having that curiosity and that ambition, and uh, basically you're looking forward to actively doing something about that role. So, were there any
Yeah.
certifications that you did while you transition, or are there any certifications that you plan to do?
Yeah.
Sure.
So certification wise, right now, certainly, I have like I have some things in mind, but I haven't exactly figured out. But yeah, with time, with the profile, so right now I'm even thinking of doing something. So even in FP&A to bring in additional value, because in fintech, in a credit card business, what I'm feeling a FRM for me is going to help me. So not
Okay.
exactly linked to FP&A, but certainly it will give me more sense or more understanding about the risk management, which is key for any fintech business around your receivables, around your underwriting. So that kind of, it's not always a direct correlation, but yeah, when you are someone new want to go into a FP&A kind of function, yeah, certainly there are a lot of certifications available from Big Four kind of thing, or even the ICA has certifications. So you can always check out that two week or 4 week program is always good to have. But even after getting into a role, you can certainly do some courses which may not directly related, but certainly you can add value to the organization through that, and
Makes
to your personal profile.
makes sense. So now we're coming to almost the end of our conversation. Maybe a couple of more questions. So can you share any particular experience that you had while you were interviewing for either Merck or with the one card, which can be helpful for FP&A audience, or which can be helpful to the accounting and audit audience, in terms of just sharing and something that you might have had as a learning, or something that you think they should be doing?
So I think the first thing, when I interviewed for Merck, that was more of a transition role for me. So I think the thing to navigate is to be true when you are discussing with the manager. So what you actually know and what you want to learn, because even while telling what you already know, what you want to learn always shows your commitment. So when I went for a Merck interview, I explained that what are the skills I already have and what I intend to learn by putting more efforts here, and what value I want to add on my personal side, and what I want to add to the organization through these learnings. So I spoke about basically, because I was working with Cipla more on the receivables front, I had Excel skills, but business understanding, I didn't had much. But I spoke that I always want to be closer to business is what I have understood in last 2 years. So I want to be an FP&A profile where I am able to work onto the numbers, but also getting a sense of a business. So understanding the business, and I then want to own the P&L in terms of I want to drive the revenue line, I want to own the expenses, and I will find the initiatives where I can bring in the savings for the business. So initial 1 year will be a learning phase for me, where I will learn things, put in the process, understand existing business. But then after that, I will also want to bring in the value where I can work on the cost saving initiatives as such. So that also shows the commitment in terms of what you can bring. So being true and always speaking on the learning part. So that was one thing. Second thing is, in both the kind of interviews, or even the more number of interviews I have given in the past on the FP&A, most of the questions will be around your business cases kind of thing. So what have you contributed to the business, or there will be a business case study they will give you, that if you want to launch this product or if you want to build build a business model, how you will do it. So I think that reading beforehand, before the interview, that basic, because if you want to build a business from a scratch for credit card business, how you will build it. So you should always have that thought process before going to the interview. It's easier to answer them. So I think that's the brief advice.
Okay, so if I have to summarize it, understanding again, coming back to the business side and understanding how the process works on the business side, having it clearly in your mind is something that is required, and also being true. Okay, I know these things. I've done this in my previous role, but I am also looking to learn a lot of new things which I am really curious about. Also, that might take 6 months, but after I do that for 6 months, and I'm really looking forward to contribute and adding value to the business. I think all of
Yeah,
this will definitely be a good pitch or a good convincing point for any interview. So thank you so much. Before we wrap up, I want to ask you, okay, now say you are a hiring manager in FP&A and you want to hire an analyst, say in your company, which will be working with you or under you. So, what are the couple of questions that you will ask that person to be able to test his or her understanding of business, FP&A, and all of the things that we talked about? So, maybe one or two questions that you will ask anybody that you are hiring in your team.
yeah. So I would basically generally I will start with interaction around a product. I will give any product and tell to build a business case, like how you will build a model, basically build an 3-year business plan for this. So that is the
Okay.
key question I generally ask. And then
Mhm.
around these more questions around the Excel skills and some certifications and around the Power BI or Tableau. So trying to understand what existing skills the person have, and
Mhm.
also through the business case study whether the person has that logical mindset or not, or whether he can build on that or not. That basic questions is generally I try to ask.
So more on understanding how they can visualize modeling, say,
Yeah.
revenue for the product or modeling a business case in terms of what the P&L will look like for that product
Yes.
company.
Yes.
So thank you so much. I think this has been very useful and good. I mean, I've learned a lot from this conversation, which will go as a part of the book as well. So thank you so much, and I look forward to having this, and I'll keep you updated on it.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Asif. Has been really like wonderful discussion with you as well.